The High Court in the UK has delayed handing down its decision on Julian Assange's extradition. The ball is now in the United States court. It's been asked to provide assurances that the WikiLeaks founder will receive a fair trial to avoid the death penalty if he's extradited. Joining me live now is Julian Assange's lawyer, Jennifer Robinson. Jen, thanks so much for your time late in London there. I really appreciate it. I think we're all trying to get our head around the detail here as you have been poring over this judgment, no doubt, for most of the day. What does it mean for Julian Assange, essentially?
This judgment effectively means a brief reprieve from potential US extradition. The court's judgment today validates the concerns that we've been raising for a very long time about the risks to Julian's free speech and to free speech rights more generally as a result of this case. The US's argument is, of course, that Julian should face prosecution in the United States for publishing truthful information about the United States, evidence of war crimes and human rights abuse, and that they can extradite him there, exercise jurisdiction over this Australian citizen, but not grant him constitutional free speech protections. And the court today said that's unacceptable, and we want an assurance from you that he will be given those protections. But what this is actually doing is just providing a reprieve. The courts are saying, well, you've got a fundamentally flawed case here, but we're going to give you the opportunity to make some political promises to remedy these faults. And we say that's unacceptable. So the US has 3 weeks now to give assurances that he will not be subjected to the death penalty, that he will be granted free speech protections, and that he won't be discriminated against on the basis that he's Australian. Now, we say that we shouldn't even be talking about assurances, that this is a case that should never have been brought, and the DOJ should be dropping it entirely, precisely because of the implications for free speech.
So, Jen, does that then sound an ominous warning for you that the British court is just seeking assurances from the US and that eventually this decision, it sounds like the judges in this case might be about to hand down a decision that is the worst possible outcome for Julian?
Absolutely, Laura. We are very concerned about this. Effectively, and we've seen it happen in this case before, when the US has not got the outcome they wanted. Remember, people will remember that we won the case on the basis that it would be oppressive to extradite Julian to prison conditions that would be oppressive, that would cause his suicide because of his potential mental health picture and his Asperger's diagnosis. And when the US got an outcome they didn't like, they simply offered a diplomatic assurance, which Amnesty International says is not worth the paper that it's written on. So it's a seriously unacceptable situation that an award-winning Australian journalist and publisher could be extradited to the United States on the basis of mere political promises that aren't enforceable. This is incredibly troubling. And so we've seen the courts waive through US diplomatic assurances before. We are very concerned about this. So this is just a brief reprieve. It remains to be seen what will happen in the coming months, whether the US will offer this assurance, but Julian could still be extradited to the United States in a matter of months. So it's incredibly serious.
And how is he? How is his mental health? Is he suicidal?
Look, the accepted medical evidence is that if he's extradited to the United States, the particular prison conditions, the inhuman and degrading treatment that he would suffer, and his mental health would cause him to commit suicide. That is the accepted medical evidence. And that's why you hear his wife talking about the risk to his life. But I spent the afternoon with him in prison this afternoon going over the judgment. And of course, this legal uncertainty and the imminence of his potential extradition to those prison conditions is terrifying for him and for his family, and it's weighing incredibly heavily on him and having a huge impact on his mental and physical health. And that's why we agree with our Prime Minister, who says enough is enough. It's been going on too long. It's time to bring him home, and we couldn't agree more.
And how was he when you went through the judgment with him?
Obviously, it's disappointing. It's disappointing that the court would raise these very serious concerns that we've been raising. The US has had 5 years pursuing this extradition request to offer these assurances. They've refused and failed to do so. And the court's now allowing them to remedy this fundamentally flawed extradition request with some mere political promises. So for him, the uncertainty of what's ahead, the imminence of his potential extradition, and the consequences for him if he is extradited, it's horrific.
Jen, what is your message to the Australian Parliament and more specifically the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, because there is considerable flex that he could use with our United States closest allies, our partners here. Is it time he used that to maximum effect?
Of course, I first want to say that we are grateful to the Prime Minister and to the Australian government and indeed the Parliament and the Australian people for the immense support that we've had since Prime Minister Albanese came to power. And he has been consistently raising this with the US and has said so publicly. But of course, we need the Australian government to put as much pressure as possible. And now we are coming to the sharp end of the case. This is a case that could be resolved. The DOJ could make a decision to drop this case at any time. The Australian government has made that request, and it's time that the Australian government utilises our special relationship. We are an important strategic ally, and it's disrespectful that the US is ignoring the Australian government's request to bring this case to an end.
Jen Robinson, thanks so much for joining us live from London. We really appreciate it.
Great to speak with you, Laura.